saw last year, and to go back to that Patriots point that you made before, we saw last year that the Patriots kicked the tires on Antonio Brown, kind of similar to what you were saying before about how they tend to pick up these personalities. But in New England, the guy who vouched for Antonio Brown and tried to bring him in and really get him acclimated into that situation more than anybody else was Tom Brady. And we saw Tom Brady offer his home and his resources to AB, and you know that Tom has to be salivating at the idea of bringing on Antonio Brown, and those though they have two great receivers down there. That's honestly probably one of the top 2 or 3 duos in the NFL, if not the best. But adding Antonio Brown, a very, very sure-handed guy who could really work 5 to 7 yards away from the line of scrimmage, and he's kind of the perfect receiver that Brady has always liked. That very, very shifty guy, sure-handed guy who could work the middle of the field, guy who could run those out routes and get a little separation on the outside close by. So, I mean, I think it's a great fit. We've seen Antonio Brown have his personal problems over the course of the past year. He's probably, for other people, I think he's probably exhausted all of his chances. But as we know, NFL teams and NFL circles, they're willing to give these guys as many chances as it takes to keep them on the field.
I'm just surprised the Jets haven't signed him, to be honest. But also keep an eye on, if he gets reinstated again, Josh Gordon. I think you could see him reuniting with Brady as well. But if you have a guy like Gordon and Brown with Evans, and of course Gronk's there and Goodwin, and I think you could definitely see some egos clashing about, Tom, give me the ball. So that's something they'll just have to keep an eye on, and hopefully everything could work out. Hopefully there's a season, Joe, and we can see some football. They canceled the Hall of Fame game, and they're likely going to cancel at least 2 weeks of the preseason. And it's going to be interesting to see how these teams decide on their roster, because usually a lot of the back-end special team guys are picked through the preseason, but it's just going to be a massive cut down. And, they'll see if Cam Newton wins the starting job here, not really in the playbook. My guess, Joe, would be that they actually have a quarterback competition, but Cam is going to win, and we'll just take it from there and see what happens with football. The other news this week was that, unfortunately, Joe, it looks like the Knicks are going down another bad path here. They're really strongly considering hiring Jason Kidd, because they think if Jason Kidd is the coach, and we saw his troubles off the court and on with the Nets, and then the Bucks, that the aforementioned Bucks superstar Giannis Antetokounmpo would like to come here as a free agent after next offseason because he wants to reunite with Jason Kidd. To me, that makes no sense because, number one, Jason Kidd was his coach, but he did not get the best out of him. As soon as Jason Kidd leaves, the Bucks become one of the best teams in the East. And number two, he then became an MVP with the Bucks. Now, number three, he'd be crazy to leave the Bucks because he's going to make so much more money there, getting an extension. And you're looking at crazy times here with COVID-19, and the salary cap's probably going to go down, so you're not going to see the salary cap going up, everybody getting more money. And I think it would be an absolute disaster if the Knicks hired Jason Kidd to be their head coach.
I mean, everything that the Knicks have done over the course of the last, 25 years has been somewhat of a disaster, so this doesn't really surprise me in the slightest. I think, obviously, the number one reason for anything Jason Kidd regard is because he was the coach of the Milwaukee Bucks. He's got connections to Giannis. The Knicks are always trying to look 2 years ahead into free agency. Oh, we're going to get the next big free agent. We're going to get the next big free agent. Obviously, that never works. And I'm pretty sure that Giannis, for everything that we hear about him, is probably one of the most soft-spoken, mild-mannered. I'm pretty sure he's very, very happy with his situation in Milwaukee. Not entirely sure why a former MVP who almost made the NBA Finals last year on the team that he's currently on would leave a team that's a perennial 60-win contending team to come to the New York Knicks. I'm not entirely sure how that makes sense. So
Giannis has all the power in Milwaukee. They signed his brother, who the Knicks let go for some reason. He's got another brother that's going to be coming to the league in the next 2 years. I'm sure he'll make sure they get him. So why would he want to leave Milwaukee to come to New York?
Absolutely no reason for that. And to add on, since we're on the topic of the Knicks, it also came out this week that the pitch that the Knicks made for LeBron James back in 2010. Now, most people assume that he was just ready to go to the Miami Heat with Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh. They had that situation all ready to go. Apparently, the Knicks were more highly regarded on LeBron's destination list than previously noted. So in that meeting, the Knicks tried to win LeBron over by having James Gandolfini and Edie Falco reprise their roles of Tony and Carmelo Soprano, and that apparently didn't really sit well with LeBron because the Knicks, like a typical Knicks fashion, all the glitz and the glam of the Knicks, right, trying to appease LeBron in that way. The meeting was obviously a disaster because there was nothing of substance that convinced LeBron that the Knicks were going to be able to keep and put together a winning basketball situation for him in the immediate, for the present and the immediate future. So it was so much of a disaster for the Knicks that LeBron did not take a second meeting with the team. Now, can you imagine fumbling a situation like that? It's insane to me. And now here we are 10 years later, and Knicks fans, Knicks brass think that just by bringing in Jason Kidd, who is not really a really convincing head coach in any regard. Like, yeah, he was not bad with Milwaukee, but he wasn't really great either. You know, there's nothing that I've seen from Jason Kidd as a head coach that shows me that he could be a long, sustaining, winning head coach in the NBA. So not only are the Knicks targeting basically a guy who's above mediocre at this point, let's call him an average NBA coach, but now they think that, it's like the LeBron situation all over again. It's like Giannis is coming, 2 years from now. We're gonna make amends for not getting LeBron and for not getting.
This just happened last year. They traded Porzingis for no one, and they didn't get Kevin Durant. I'm over it.
Right.
Hire Tom Thibodeau, and let's just build the team from the ground up. Hopefully, they get the top pick in the draft, and they get somebody who's actually good. Take an international guy, get James Wiseman, do something. I'm over this. If you could sign somebody, great. But you can't mortgage the whole season or three to think of, maybe we'll get this guy. The numbers are not adding up as to why he'd want to come here. And it's just really a house of horrors. And speaking of house of horrors, WWE Extreme Rules, they add on this new title with the horror show, whatever the heck they want to call it. I don't understand what's going on with that. It's just a disaster right now with wrestling. You got people testing positive. Thank goodness they did this Undertaker tribute show on SmackDown, so I don't have to watch about an hour of SmackDown. I can just fast forward it, because some of these episodes are hard to watch. But the other thing on wrestling, Joe, is that it's kind of affects wrestling, which is that Tyson Fury, who has another rubber match coming up with Deontay Wilder, has agreed to do a 2-fight deal with Anthony Joshua. Anthony Joshua, of course, on DAZN. Tyson Fury is ESPN property, I believe. So it'll be interesting to see how they go about negotiating that pay-per-view deal and who's going to broadcast that. Hopefully our guy Adnan Virk's on the call. But that's interesting that they're going to finally unify the heavyweight titles, which is long overdue. But this really impacts WWE because the plans prior to WrestleMania being canceled in Tampa Bay was that Fury was going to have a match. I'm guessing he was probably going to team up with Strowman and win the tag title or something and, do wrestling. But we got to see Tyson Fury versus Brock Lesnar at some point, especially with Brock Lesnar probably going to regain the WWE Championship at SummerSlam against Drew McIntyre.
Yeah, so I'm very, very interested now because Anthony Joshua versus Tyson Fury was obviously a fight a lot of people wanted to see way back when, as far back as 2 or 3 years ago when Fury was really first making his comeback. And then we saw Joshua lose to Anthony Ruiz, which I think he lost a ton of mystique for that. And obviously it's going to be a 2-fight series. They're going to try to have the fight at a big venue, Wembley Stadium, right? So Wembley Stadium normally for concert seats like 80 to 90,000 people. For a boxing match, it would obviously go over 100,000 in capacity. But because of the current situation with COVID, we honestly have no idea when this is going to end. So we don't know if that's even possible. by this time next year, if they plan on having the fight, who knows? Maybe it's still at 25 to 50% capacity for a stadium like that. I mean, obviously, 25 to 50,000 people would still be a lot of people to have at a boxing fight. But yeah, so I think a lot of the mystique has been lost with Joshua, and I think Tyson Fury right now is as the best he's ever been. He's the most popular he's ever been. Obviously, he's been able to parlay that popularity into doing other stuff, especially within the scope of WWE. And I was one of those people that was actually fairly impressed with Tyson Fury. He had the match against Braun Strowman back in Saudi Arabia. And I happen to think, for what it was, for what Fury did on short notice and the training and stuff, I happen to think it was a very solid match between two really big athletes. And I'm a fan of Braun Strowman, and obviously I like Tyson Fury. Who doesn't? So, but yeah, Tyson Fury versus Brock Lesnar is obviously one of those kinds of matches that Vince will jump all over. He still thinks Brock is a big-time draw. He's still willing to pay money to get Brock to do the appearances. Obviously, this is something that will never happen at the Performance Center. That makes no sense to happen at the Performance Center. It would have to happen at a major pay-per-view. It would have to happen at a place where there are fans in attendance. So naturally, a spot like this would be at a WrestleMania. I don't know if it would be for the title. I think they're going to kind of still run with Drew McIntyre right now, but we'll see what happens if they do decide to give Lesnar the title again. But in terms of having a one-off, I have always been in the camp that I really like having crossover entertainers and celebrities and legitimate professional athletes do anything related to professional wrestling. I think it's very cool. I think it works if the athlete or the entertainer or the celebrity is a huge fan of wrestling. Sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes it is a miss. I think generally speaking, for the most part, it's a hit. And I think Tyson Fury is one of those guys who's a combat sports athlete, right? So I think in terms of boxing and mixed martial arts and people who have generic wrestling background, guys who are like Kurt Angle or like Justin Gable now in WWE, or who are female competitors like Ronda Rousey was and Shayna Baszler. I think combat sport athletes, generally speaking, have a respect for each other in that scope that a lot of people don't necessarily have. A lot of people just write off wrestling as, oh, it's fake. Oh, why would you do that? Whereas I think people like Tyson Fury enjoy the challenge of going in and showing off the athleticism and trying to make something to entertain the fans. So I think the idea of Brock versus Fury, to me, it sounds awesome. I don't know if it would be for the championship or not. It's one of those things that I think would possibly happen simply because I think having the boxing heavyweight champion again of the world against the WWE champion of the world is something that would really, really appeal to Vince McMahon. There have been ideas thrown out in the past, especially with Brock doing every now and then. He used to go back to UFC, maybe him coming and becoming the UFC heavyweight champion, and then him being a champion in two different,
Can you imagine it, the companies. UFC champion versus the boxing champion in WWE ring? I mean, that would just be major box office, big bucks. I don't care what fans would say. That'd be crazy. And to speak about WrestleMania is built upon using outside stars. Mr. T, Lawrence Taylor, Drew Carey, Snooki. I mean, the list goes on and on.
Floyd Mayweather.
Shaq should have had a match, but he chickened out. Shaq versus Big Show, I'd still like to say it. So the star appeal is real. And when it comes to selling these big time events, I think that's what you want. Tyson Fury would definitely opt in on another wrestling match. He wants to do it. But right now, you have players opting out of restarting MLB, NBA, and NHL. You got Artemi Panarin, who is poised to lead the Rangers to a Stanley Cup one of these years. He has an issue with coming back, basically because of the way the escrow and everything's set up with the CBA for this season, Joe.
Right, so from what we gathered over the past couple of days, reports came out that the deduction for the escrow for the NHL players might be as much as 20%. Now, I follow multiple NHL writers, so there's a really good one. His name's Adrian Dater. So NHL players, obviously, in comparison to the other sports, really don't quite make as much. So if you're in a situation like Artemi Panarin is now, if you were to just go online and look at his salary, you see he makes $11 million. You're like, oh, he makes $11 million, right? But obviously he lives in New York. You have to deal with taxes and stuff. right? So NHL players, especially who play in major markets, could be seeing as much as over a 50% increase in their salaries